Okay, so I am going to be showing you how to use the gilded leafing today. So this product is in the annual catalog. You will find it on page 141. It's item number 154560, and it's $12.25. You get 4 ounces or 3 grams, and it's super light and fluffy. It's a lot of fun to use. It's intended to be used with Versamark and heat and stick powder. But if you don't have those, there are several other options. So I'm going to show you those today. So we're going to start with its intended use. So I am going to show you how I used it. For the first card, I used the Ray of Light stamp set. So I stamped this with Versamark. I added the heat and stick powder and heat set it with the embossing tool, and then added the gilded leafing. And this is what I came up with. You can see the shine on that. And then I did it again on another card with color and contour. So I used it, this stamp here to stamp into the flowers, and the splatter stamp for the background. I'm going to do this one live so you can see exactly how it's used. So I've got some card pieces that I'll bring in. So before I get started, I'm just going to share a couple little tips about the gilded leafing. Because it is so light and airy, it has a tendency when you open the container to want to fluff out. So when you're working with it, I recommend that you don't work with an overhead fan on because it will blow it all over the place. Not to work in a space with like in direct, what's the word? Of like a vent or something. So if you're in the way of that, it will blow all this stuff. Same with turn your head if you're going to sneeze because it will fly. I like to have a dedicated container for it so that when I'm working, everything is kind of contained. So I'm going to go ahead and open. This is just a Tupperware container. It's nothing fancy. But if I use it for when I'm using the gilded leafing, everything stays inside and I have less waste that way. And you can see how just light it is, just wants to fly away. It is a little bit staticky too. The other tip that I recommend is having something to brush the gilded leafing off your project with. So Stampin' Up! Used to sell Stampin' Sponges, and that's what I'm using in mine. We no longer carry them, but you can get them at the dollar store. You could also use a blending brush or a sponge dauber, even a paintbrush, if it had a nice, like, thick end to it, just to brush it all off. So those are some tips. See it flying out already. All right, so we're gonna get started with this card. I've already got my stamps mounted up, so start with the flower. I like to just flip it over and make sure that it's shiny so that I know I've got Versamark on there. And I'm just gonna line it up over top. I'm old school. I'm just going to use a coffee filter to add the heat and stick powder. And the reason I like the coffee filters is because I can now just kind of squeeze that in and put it all right back in. They have less waste. And they're really inexpensive, which is a plus too. Okay, so it's going to be noisy for a second here. Just we're going to heat that up. Now for the fun part. You're just going to take this, and I've got my gilded leafing already in here. I'm just going to push my paper right onto it so that it picks them up. That heat and stick powder turns into an adhesive, so it's all just going to attract and stick to the gilded leafing. So it's going to look like this. Just going to press it all on there. And this is where your sponge, your blending brush, dauber paintbrush, whatever you're using, comes in handy. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to gently rub that off. So with the gilded leafing, you get to choose what kind of finish you want. So I could leave it like this, and it would have some texture, or I could keep rubbing it and get it to go a little smoother. And there's no right or wrong. It's whatever the end result is that is most appealing to you. So there we go. It's picking it up. There we go. So super easy peasy to use. So we're going to go ahead and do the background as well. And this was just the splatter, which is in a random pattern, which is always nice, which can't go wrong, random. Feel free, if you have any questions, you can just shout them out. I'm happy to answer. We're going to add the heat and stick powder again. Transfer the excess back into the container. Okay, so it'll be noisy for a minute again, just to heat that powder. And it's nice on black because you'll be able to visually see when it changes. So we're going to do the same thing. I don't have chat up. I know Jamie asked a question. If somebody's able to shout it out, because I can't see, that would be awesome.
I was just asking Kristen what set you can get the splatter stamp in.
Oh, that was in color and contour. So it's just the stamp.
Perfect.
There. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to do the same thing. It's all on there, kind of messy. We're just going to brush it all off. And again, you can leave it rough so that you've got a little bit of texture, or you can brush until it's a little bit smoother. I'm just going to flick it to get rid of the dust. So there we go. And it's nothing dramatic, but when it's in the back, it's kind of a fun little added bonus. Some extra shimmer to the card, and it kind of makes it elegant. So that's how you do that. Easy peasy. Another way you can use the gilded leafing is if you have some liquid glue, and a fine tip glue would work as well. It would actually probably work better. So what I did, this is just a designer series paper. And let's see if I can get it up near the camera. Do you see how some of the little spots on the strawberries are shimmery now?
Oh yeah, those are pretty.
Yeah, so all I did was take the glue and I just did a little dot on each of the seeds in the strawberry. So on this one, I just went in and did a couple of the petals. Now you'll see like there's a messy streak of gold there. That's what happens if the glue is too wet when you start rubbing. So you want to put your dots on and then kind of set it aside so it dries a little bit so it's tacky and not wet. If it's tacky, then it's sticky enough that the gilded leafing will stick to it, but not so wet that when you go to remove some of it, it leaves a big streak, like what happened to me on that one. All right, so I can show you. And if you have a fine tip glue, it'll work a lot better. This is kind of a clumsy way of adding detail because it is such a thicker adhesive. So I'm just doing a couple polka dots. So you have a choice now. You can set it aside and let it dry a little bit before you go in, or you can go in but not rub off. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get some gilded leafing on there, but I'm going to set that aside and not rub it off. We'll come back to that. All right. So since we have this out, I'm going to show you a couple other fun ways to use that. This is probably my favorite. So what we're going to do is take a little bit of the liquid glue and just squeeze some out onto the glass mat. So I don't know if you can see it there, but just a little bit of glue there. We're going to take a water painter. So I'm going to use the one with the widest tip. And I actually don't want it wet, so I'm just gonna try to get some of the moisture off the end. It's okay if it's a little bit damp, but I don't want it saturated. So on this card, you notice I chose a dark color. The gold shows off really well against dark. So this one was black. I've got Blackberry Bliss this time, which is another dark color. And it again, it'll just show the gold really well. So we're gonna stick the water painter in there. This is a card base. So you see it has a score line. I am just going to drag it across the score line there a couple times. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's actually a little bit more fun when it's kind of messy. Then we'll bring in the gilded leafing again. You see how this container is kind of handy, right? You can see that that was just a thin layer, so it's not white, it's gone like a glazy color. Pop it right down. Ooh, did you see that fly? It's so light and fluffy. So you can manipulate it with your hands as well. Pick some up and just put some where I want it. Feel glue here, so I'm going to pick some and put more there. Okay. You can see how it's pretty textured. I'm going to go ahead and start rubbing some of that off. Now, like I said before, if you want it to be textured, you can leave it so that it's rough like that, or you can keep going and get it smoother. Right? Get some of the dust off. All right, so there's our card base. Fold it down on the score line. And what a fun way of making your own kind of fancy card bases. So I'll show you my finished card. This is what I did with that. I put it on the other side too. I have to say I prefer it just with one side, and I love how it transfers to the back of the card as well. So I used Enduring Beauty for that. And I'll open it up so you can see how it was just over the fold. You could have fun with that. Card inserts, you could do that on your envelopes as well. A lot of fun. So that's another way to use the liquid glue. And I'll show you one more. So while we have the liquid glue out, we are going to put a little bit more on that glass mat. And this time we're going to use the paintbrush water painter. So it comes in a 3-pack, and this is the one with the bigger tip, not the fine tip. So what we're going to do, oh, I think I got blue. What we're going to do is just squeeze and add a little bit of water to that to make it runnier. There we go. Some more. Okay, so now it's just running. And I'm going to go ahead and just tap that against my finger to create kind of a splatter. Hopefully you can see that. And it's up to you how much splatter you want on there. Got a cloth handy. I'm just going to get rid of that adhesive so I don't stick to everything. And then we'll bring back in the gilded leafing. And go ahead and put it right down so that it picks up. Now, because this is wet, I don't want to rub this one too soon. So I'm going to set it aside. Oop. And I'm going to bring back that designer series paper that we used the liquid glue on. And let's go ahead and see if it's ready. So we'll just kind of rub that gently. And you can see these ones we just did, they were ready, but the ones down here are still a little wet, so I don't want to rub them too much. But you could highlight anything in designer series paper. So it could be flowers, it could be animals, it could be fruit, whatever you want to highlight. So that's a lot of fun. It's like creating your own specialty paper, right? So I'm just going really gentle because, you know, for the sake of the video, I want to be able to rub it off, but I also don't want to make a big streak. I'm going to turn to the side and give it a flick on the back. So get rid of some of the dust. So there we go. Kind of a galaxy-like background on the colors, isn't it? And so you could fold it in half and that would be your card base. It's just a fun, shiny background. And here is the completed card. So I used that as my background. All right, so any questions about the liquid glue at all? So we used it with the paintbrush, we used it for splatter, we used it on designer series paper. All right. I am going to show you another fun way to use it then. Just get this out of the way. All right, so I've got a strip of wild wheat here. And I've got tear and tape. So by now you've probably noticed the theme. So as long as you have an adhesive, you're going to be able to have fun with that gilded leafing. So just putting 3 strips on this. I'm gonna take my scissors. I'm just gonna cut the excess off the ends. I'm gonna peel those strips off to reveal the adhesive. Bring the gilded leafing back in. And then we're just going to press this down to pick up the gilded leafing again. And the tear and tape is super sticky. So it's awesome to work with. When you flip it over, you can see that it picks up a lot. And because it's not wet like the liquid glue, you can go ahead and work right away. You don't have to worry about it streaking or making a mess. So again, you can see how it's textured here. If you like that rough look, you can leave it like that, or you can keep going until it is kind of polished. Rough, it has a little bit more of an antique-y vibe to it. So it is nice either way. You also, when you leave it rough, you see more of the flakes, the individual flakes. It has that texture instead of being smooth and polished. So how quick and easy was that? So I used this with Fluffiest Friends. I stamped some bees on the side there. And here is my completed card. I think that bear is super cute. And that is just with the gilded leafing, just like we did here. So kind of fun. Any questions about the tear and tape? If you don't have it already, you're going to want to get it. It's so easy to use. A lot of fun, and it's great for your 3D projects. If you make boxes or bags, it's a stronger hold. But it's great for the gilded leafing. Those fractured cards are really popular right now, if you know what I mean, where they go in the triangle, and it would be easy to use the tear and tape for that. All right. So the next card, this one here. Does anyone want to guess what I used for the gilded leafing on this one? No. I just used glue dots. So I took a stitch square out of Stylish Shapes, cut the Highland Heather cardstock for my square, and then I took the square and I just pressed it onto the glue dots in a random pattern, and then dipped the whole square into the gilded leafing and brushed it all off. So that gave me those gold polka dots, which again, it just ends up looking like a fun paper, and it's got a little bit of bling on the card. So super easy. The last thing I did, I took adhesive sheets. I don't know if you are familiar with adhesive sheets, but they make die cutting a lot easier. Oh, I know where my piece is. Just realizing I don't have one here to show you, so I'm gonna have to cut one. So what I did is I took one of the adhesive sheets out of the pack. And what you do, if you haven't used it before, is you just peel the strip off of it. So it's double-sided. You're going to peel the strip off both sides because it's sticky on both sides. But you're going to peel it all off, and then you stick it to your cardstock so that it looks like this. Now, whatever you die cut, this is going to be the front. So I'm going to cut out a number, and I'll be able to just peel that off and stick it into the gilded leafing. So let's go ahead. Do that really quick. All right. So now you can just take a piercing tool to get that adhesive. Of course, it's going to be tricky. There we go. All right, so we've peeled that off. We can go ahead and stick it right in the gilded leafing. And then you can, just like the tear and tape, you can just start to brush the gilded leafing off right away. So the good thing about the adhesive sheets is I wanted to choose just a letter or a number, something that's small that I could show you. And I'm using a retired set because it was thicker than my alphabet owl mode ones, which would make it harder for you to see. See how easy that is? So there's numbers, there's the little beehive. It's cute. But you can use that for any sort of background too. So for example, I ran out of time, so I didn't do this, but I thought with this Meandering Meadows paper, which has the really beautiful sceneries, you could take that Grassy Groves dye and you could do that with an adhesive sheet and make all of that kind of gold and brush it off, and with that beautiful background. How nice would that look? So the sky's the limit with die cuts and the adhesive sheets. Let's bring back in our projects. We have the liquid glue, if you remember. Head stamping. Glue dots, tear and tape, adhesive sheets, liquid glue on the designer series paper. And
Kristen, are the hexagon dimensionals, are those sticky enough to do it on too?
I would think so.
Okay, just because they're in different shape, right? So I would
Yeah.
think they would look really neat.
And they would be popped up, yeah. I have some projects because the gilded leafing has been around for a few years. So I'm going to show you some past projects I've done with classes. So these won't necessarily be current products that you can buy, but it just shows you some more ways. So this was on an embossing folder. So all I did was you could use a sponge to pick up liquid glue, or you could use a little paintbrush. I used a sponge. I just dipped it in liquid glue and then lightly put it on, just in the four corners, and brushed it off. So it's fun on embossing folders as well. For this one, this was just designer series paper again. I kind of put the liquid glue on some of the petals and then added the gilded leafing and brushed it off. It kind of makes it like a specialty paper, right? It's got some gold accents now. This one was, again, with the tear and tape, just on a diagonal pattern. Add some shine. Really quick and easy way to spruce up a card. This one was the adhesive sheets again. I used them to cut out the sayings with a die. And then in the background, you can see on the petals, I just used liquid glue and dipped it into the gilded leafing as well. And then this last one, it was a stamp. So it was kind of like the first card that we made. Just stamped the accents for the petal and then dipped it in the gilded leafing. Yeah. Those are just some ways to use the gilded leafing. Does anyone have any questions? Happy to answer. Does anyone have gilded leafing that they've been afraid to use and they might crack it open now?
No, but I definitely want to get some.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope you do and have a lot of fun with it. Sometimes like some products, if you're not sure how to use them, and it can be a little intimidating, but this one is super fun to play with. Like you'll probably come up with even more ideas than what you see here once you start playing with it. All right, I am going to stop the recording then if there's no questions, and then if we want, we can just chat. I have to find that record button again.